Is it safe to say that based off of your comments, you're suggesting that these women at these abortion rallies are ugly and overweight?
Yes.
What do you say to people who think that those comments are offensive?
Be offended.
The view is the gift that just keeps on giving. They're constantly infighting. They're constantly talking over each other. And of course, they have the worst political takes you could ever possibly imagine. Now, I have to be careful about not doing too many videos because otherwise this would just simply be a view repost channel. But this was just too good to pass up. What we're going to see today is Sunny Hostin being forced to apologize in real time for comments she made about Matt Gaetz. But before we get to the video, please like and comment so we can break through the algorithms. Here we go.
So the volume is being turned up on sexual misconduct allegations against the current nominee to lead the U.S. Justice Department, Matt Gaetz. The House Ethics Committee meets tomorrow to decide whether they should release a report of their findings, but the lawyer for two of Gaetz' accusers isn't waiting that long. Take a look.
At this particular event, what did your client witness?
She testified in July of 2017 at this house party. She was walking out to the pool area and she looked to her right and she saw Representative Gaetz having sex with her friend who was 17.
So now reportedly the GOP senators are being called on by you-know-who to push the nomination through no matter what. They think they'll bow to the pressure. Even with all these allegations, do you think that's possible?
Listen, I still think it's about a 50-50 chance that he actually gets confirmed, and not because I've got some strong, belief that the Senate is going to put pressure against Donald Trump or is going to oppose him, but because Matt Gaetz is universally despised in Congress.
Yeah.
I can't think
more
of
than
somebody
Ted Cruz?
Even more so than Ted Cruz. In the House, it's because he overthrew Kevin McCarthy and brought the House to a screeching halt. There was an image where he nearly got in it. He was in a shouting match that looked like it was going to go to blows during that period. And he's somebody who, his reputation precedes him in Washington. These allegations are not surprising to people who have been around him and have heard these things over the years. Matt Gaetz is a person of low moral character. This is widely known about him, and I'm kind of bullish he's not going to get through.
Yeah, I think what we really need to think about is the position that he has been nominated for by this president elect. To be the Attorney General means that you're responsible for the Department of Justice. And the Department of Justice is one of the largest law enforcement agencies in the world. And it's very serious business. I mean, you have the Civil Rights Division, Antitrust Division, the Criminal Division, U.S. Attorney's offices, the FBI. And within the Department of Justice, you have the Sex Crimes Unit, which is what I was a part of, child sex crimes and child trafficking. How could you nominate someone with allegations of child trafficking trafficking across state lines and having sex with a 17-year-old? My understanding further on in the interview, they discussed the fact that once he finds out that she's 17, he stops having sex with her. Aren't you a little bit disturbed, as we all should be, that it's his reputation for being a jerk that would take him out rather than the substance of what these women are saying?
A few moments later.
Sonny, you have a legal note.
I do have a legal note. Thank you, Whoopi. Matt Gaetz has long denied all allegations, calling the claims, quote, invented, and saying in a statement to ABC News that this false smear following a 3-year criminal investigation should be viewed with great skepticism. That DOJ investigation was closed with no charges being brought.
We'll be right back.
So after going on this huge diatribe about Matt Gaetz' supposed awful behavior, Sunny Hostin is forced to issue a legal correction, right? Essentially, it's just a retractment because ABC does not want to get sued, okay? And by the way, look at her face during this whole statement, right? She looks like she's making a hostage video, right? She's highly uncomfortable, highly upset that she has to say this because, as we all know, there is no legal founding for what she's actually saying. Yes, Matt Gaetz was investigated by the House, but you know who else investigated Matt Gaetz? It was the DOJ, and they dropped the charges because they didn't find anything. And by the way, this was Biden's DOJ. Do you think they wouldn't have nailed him to a wall if they had any credible evidence? Of course they would have, right? They'd love to have his scalp on the wall. And do we know how all of this started in the first place? It was all based off of a blackmail scheme where Matt Gaetz himself approached the FBI and said, hey, here's this guy. He's trying to blackmail me for a bunch of stuff that never actually happened. That's where all of the investigations actually came from, okay? So Matt Gaetz himself came forward and was the catalyst for all of these proceedings, right? Where an investigation found nothing. And now, of course, it's all just being recapped in the House of Representatives. And one more thing I do want to say on this, right? If Matt Gaetz was, in fact, at a house party having sex with underage people, then do you think there wouldn't have been pictures of this posted everywhere, right? Over on Twitter, on Facebook, on Instagram, somewhere, somebody would be saying something, not just to a private House committee, right? And not just the people who are trying to extort Matt Gaetz in the first place. And by the way, I really hope Matt Gaetz does get confirmed, because Donald Trump needs to have an attack dog like this that believes everything about January 6th, who believes everything about our election from 2020, right? That's why we need Matt Gaetz so much. Now, of course, the fun doesn't just stop here, because absent from that panel was Ana Navarro. So we're going to see her weigh in over on CNN.
If Republican senators do not capitulate on their duty to advise and consent, and they conduct vigorous hearings where they're, these folks are questioned,
the only people that have said
and then they vote their conscience. Right. We shouldn't be having this conversation.
But I can also tell you this. You asked a question about John Thune and whether or not what I believed about John Thune. I'll tell you this.
No, I didn't ask you that. I'm going to tell you, no, but I've known John Thune for 20 years.
I know John Thune too. I worked for him.
I think he's an institutionalist.
Yes.
And I think he's a good guy. And I hope that he will conduct himself as the new leader of the Senate and be ethical.
This is one thing
he's
that
always been.
MAGA doesn't understand about why John Thune was such a great selection, is that he understands how the Senate works. He knows these rules and procedures. He knows what it takes to run the clock on a nomination. Listen, if Democrats want to make it painful and never get home to see their districts or their families, they can run the clock on every nomination. It also eats up floor time in order to get the agenda done that Donald Trump was elected to do on behalf of the American people. If Democrats want to jam the floor of the United States Senate and ultimately have a fire alarm pulled because they're unwilling to do both of their jobs, which are nominations and not jam up the floor, and they want to run the clock,
throw their hands
or
up in
they
the
go
air.
to the legislative calendar.
Democrats cannot throw their hands up in the air.
Then they run the clock and they stop the American people from getting the agenda they want done. That's exactly what you're saying.
Not even Mitch
Having worked in the
McConnell
United States Senate, I can tell you this.
Mitch McConnell.
They will run the
May I
clock.
speak? Mitch McConnell, who had polio. I have a hard time thinking that Mitch McConnell, who had polio and knows the benefit of those vaccines and eradicating those diseases that almost wiped out children, would throw his hands up in the air and say, oh, it's RFK.
So John Thune, the new majority leader, I'm not a big fan. And he has said that he does want this House report to be released, but he has said he's willing to do recess appointments for all of Donald Trump's picks. And that, of course, would include Matt Gaetz. So I'm hopeful that, of course, Donald Trump will get every single thing he's asking for, right? We need that Matt Gaetz in there. But, of course, Ana Navarro, right? Ana Navarro, who I assume she's talking about RFK at the very end there. Why would you put him in there if he's just going to go against polio vaccines? And, of course, the Republican commentator has to say, what the heck does that have to do with anything we're talking about? We're talking about Democrats running out the clock, forcing this issue of using the recess appointments, which of course we hope happens. Now, of course, the other topic that is still out there bearing fruit is calling Donald Trump a fascist, a racist, a dictator, Hitler even, and then wanting, of course, to go and make nice and meet with him.
It's not about ratings. It's not about ratings. I'm amazed. I did not expect Hitler to get so many meeting requests. First from Joe Biden, now from Mika and Joe. It's amazing that literal Hitler is getting all these meeting requests. And what it tells me, Professor, is that all the rhetoric that came from the left, from the Democrats, from the White House, from Kamala Harris and everyone else before the election, all of the rhetoric, the fascism, the Hitler, the Nazi rally, it was all a bunch of BS. They didn't mean any of it. And if I were in the Democrat sort of rabble's shoes, I would be looking at all my leaders and going, did you just BS me for an entire 6 weeks before the election?
I just reread Hannah Arendt's The Origins of Totalitarianism, and I cannot tell you how relevant it is to today. What has gone on in totalitarian regimes before is what is happening in this country right now. It is fascism. His generals called him fascist. Joe Scarborough called him fascist. And now the fascist is in charge. And it is journalism's job to cover it that way, not to back off and say, okay, well, that's it, we lost. Let the fascism happen. No.
It says a lot more, actually, Scott, about them than it does about their beliefs, because they believe it.
They just don't care.
So what it all boils down to is, were you lying then or are you lying now? And I think they're just lying all the time, because that's what the left constantly does, right? Trump is the worst person ever. Kavanaugh, of course, has to be kept off the Supreme Court. And now, of course, Matt Gaetz must be kept from being the head of the DOJ. Okay, that is what we are facing. And that is what everyone hopefully is waking up to, including those ladies over at The View, even if it happens to be by force. So thank you for watching very much. Don't forget to like, share, comment, subscribe, and stay safe out there, people, because they're coming after you.